Alright, so treatments. There are no effective drug treatments for polio. Um, we don't have any good antivirals for polio. So the only thing that can be done is trying to treat the symptoms and trying to improve the quality of life. So for a long time, that was putting people in respirators or in the iron lungs. They do have a more modern version of the iron lung that kind of encases just your torso, but your legs are still free. But those are used for usually other situations. We don't have a lot of, well, we actually don't have any natural cases of polio in the United States right now because of the vaccine. Now, for those who are suffering from polio, and we still have some people that got polio when they were younger, like, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, we still have people who got polio then, who are still today living with post-polio symptoms. And they found that physical therapy can have some success, and so here's an example of that. Sister Elizabeth Kenny, she was one of the first people that was like, maybe we shouldn't just put people in braces and not move their muscles because then they get even more atrophied, but trying to strengthen muscles and prevent the muscles from getting atrophied. Prevention. So there are a couple of vaccines out there. The inactivated vaccine, and that's the one that we use now, and the oral live attenuated vaccine, which we used to use, but we do not use anymore. Inactivated vaccines. These are safer because there's no danger of the virus reverting. There's no danger of you catching polio from the inactivated vaccine. These are safer. The virus is inactivated with formalin. Now, there are 3 strains of poliovirus. The inactivated vaccine does have all 3 versions. Now, this vaccine is really effective after the 3rd dose. We don't know if it gives lifelong immunity, but it does give pretty long protection. Now, the other vaccine that we have is the oral polio vaccine, and we don't give this one anymore. This vaccine is very effective, but it also protects against all 3 strains. But this virus is actively replicating. It's attenuated, so it doesn't make you sick, but it's actively replicating. And theoretically, this gives a better protection. This is a better trial run for your immune system, and so it was used for a really long time. But there is a risk of reversion. And this risk is very, very low. It's like 1 in a million. But still, if you vaccinate, 10 million people, you're going to give 10 people polio. So while this is actively replicating in your body, it evolves, it mutates, and then it becomes pathogenic again. And so this vaccine is no longer used. So we only use the safer vaccine in the United States now. So the inactivated vaccine is the Salk vaccine. The oral polio vaccine is the Sabin vaccine. This being said, so the oral polio vaccine, actually my dad remembers getting this in school. There was a little drop of the vaccine, they put it on a sugar cube. And he said it was the best vaccine he ever got because, it wasn't a shot. It was you got to eat a sugar cube. So this vaccine is still used in other parts of the world. And as far as vaccines go, I mean, it works, it's effective, it prevents you from getting polio. And the use of this vaccine has made, worldwide, has saved, thousands and thousands and thousands of thousands of people from dying and getting polio. So that's great. But again, you've got that 1 in a million chance that it's going to undergo a reversion. And they've done the math, and they've said, well, there are no natural cases of polio in the United States anymore. So we've got this inactivated vaccine that's still pretty good, and there's no risk of anything bad happening. There's no risk of reversion with this one. So even if it's slightly less effective, this is still the better one to use. So that's what we use now. So we tried, and by we, I mean like the royal we, like other scientists in the World Health Organization, have tried to eradicate polio, like they did smallpox. However, this is not complete. This is incomplete. There have been massive improvements, and polio is almost eradicated, but not quite. This is possible because we've got multiple vaccines. This isn't infecting bats or cats or mice or anything else. So we're able to get a handle on it. We don't have to worry about controlling other animals or mosquitoes or anything like that. So it is possible to completely eradicate poliovirus, but the vaccination campaign has run into some challenges. Partly in the last few areas in the world where you still have polio replicated in the wild, these areas are impoverished, at times politically unstable, and there's also in some ways a lack of trust in having people come in, strangers come in and vaccinating people. So we're not quite yet where we've eradicated polio, but hopefully in the relatively near future we can. So in the United States, you can see we use in blue just the inactivated polio vaccine, and that's also the case in Western Europe. And then in other parts of the world, though, they're still using just the oral polio vaccine. Now, we've got a couple hotspots left that still have endemic polio. And we have active campaign efforts to try to get everybody vaccinated, but we're not there yet. So we're going to switch gears now and talk about other enteroviruses. So these viruses do not cause polio. As I mentioned in the beginning, some viruses, Coxsackie viruses, can cause myocarditis, and this can be a pretty serious infection. It is treatable. This causes symptoms that may be similar to a heart attack. And it's really important that this does get treated, because if it's not treated, it can be fatal. Rhinoviruses. So we've got lots of common cold type viruses in this family, and these viruses can be mild for most people, but if you have underlying conditions such as asthma, then this can be more serious. Now, these viruses are just going to be replicating in the respiratory tract. Hand, foot, and mouth disease. So this is actually fairly common. In Maine, they have outbreaks periodically. Hand, foot, and mouth disease is called hand, foot, and mouth disease because you get these blisters on the hands, the feet, and the mouth. And so you can see the feet and the mouth here, and on the hands you'd see similar blisters. These are usually relatively mild and they go away on their own. Rarely they can lead to serious complications. So hand, foot, and mouth disease is actually caused by a couple different enteroviruses, Coxsackie virus, Enterovirus 71, and we'll talk more about this in a second. Common signs and symptoms. So in addition to the blisters, you've got fever. And the big problem with this is it hurts. You've got these blisters and they crust over and they're painful. And so kids don't want to eat, they don't want to drink, they don't want to swallow. And then they can get dehydrated. And dehydration can actually be really serious, especially in small children. They can dehydrate easily. So the most important thing, if your kid or you know someone who gets hand, foot, and mouth disease, and this can happen in older people too, but frequently in kids, is that you make sure to keep them hydrated. So, you know, lots of Jell-O, juice, and so forth. Now, some of the viruses that can cause hand, foot, and mouth disease, we think, can also cause acute flaccid myelitis. So this is an emerging disease, possibly a re-emerging pathogen that is really, really serious. And this is a little bit freaky because we're seeing an increase in, I enjoyed down arrow there, but that's pointing to the picture, but I should, if I'm saying increase, I should not do a down arrow. We're seeing an increase over the last few years. Now, this occurs seasonally in the summer, and it's been occurring every other summer for the last few years. And we're seeing a rise every other summer. And we've got primarily children. Most of the people that infected are children. And this occurs after a case of respiratory illness or possibly hand, foot, and mouth disease. And you get symptoms very, very, very much like polio. This affects the motor neurons just like polio, and you can get the asymmetric paralysis just like polio. And it occurs seasonally in the summer just like polio. This is a little bit frightening because everybody who's gotten this have been vaccinated against polio, and when they've gone to see what's wrong with these people, none of them have polio. This is something new or re-emerging. So if you can look at the CDC's website, almost everybody, they have had a mild illness before they developed the acute flaccid myelitis. They haven't detected it in everybody, but in a lot of the people suffering from this disease, they found enteroviruses. Particularly, they found Enterovirus 71 or Enterovirus 68. And again, I want to stress, this is not polio. Everybody's been tested negative for polio, but they're getting signs and symptoms very, very much like polio. And so this is the incidence that we've seen broken down. You can see by date here. So they started picking this up in the summer 2014. This is just in the States, and it's been you see this kind of drop in 15, then back in 16, drop in 17, back in 18. They didn't really notice any in 2019, so that would fit the pattern. And then this summer we'll probably see a spike again. So this is something they are still investigating. This is something they're still watching. Does this have the potential to spread and become a wider pandemic, a bigger problem like polio? We don't know. Maybe. I want to stress this, though, and I'm emphasizing this, and you guys have a paper to read on this. We are going to do an in-class discussion on that paper, and you guys were I was gonna walk you guys through like the first figure, then you guys are gonna walk us through the next figure. Since we're not having in-class discussions anymore, I'm just gonna ask you guys to read the paper, and it might be helpful you guys answering some of the essay questions on the exam. There might be one or two multiple choice questions that come from that paper. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. But I'm emphasizing this because we don't know what new viruses are going to pop up next, right? I think this year we have a big example of that we're living through right now. So we know that viruses are out there in the wild, they're circulating, they're evolving. We know that at some point new viruses are going to emerge, like SARS coronavirus 2 or COVID-19. We know that this is a new or re-emerging disease. Does this have the potential to be really, really serious? And we live in fear of this like we did polio? Maybe. Maybe it will just kind of fade off. We don't know. But the field of virology is constantly changing, and so it's really important that we stay open-minded and we're able to apply some of the things that we've learned about previous viruses to new and emerging ones. And it's important that we pay attention to viruses that are out there circulating, and maybe if we can start studying this, maybe we can develop antivirals for this, just in case it becomes a much bigger problem. Anyway, with that, I'm going to end. This is the last lecture material for Exam 3, and then we're going to put the next topics onto the last exam. And let me guys know if you want me to keep doing the recorded lectures, or if you just want me to put up PowerPoints and you guys can just look through the PowerPoints and use the book. So let me know, send me an email, or let me know in Canvas chat if you want me to continue recording lectures for you. Alright, hope you guys are all doing well.